Picture a six-lane highway on a Tuesday morning. Traffic moves slowly, predictably, the way it always does during rush hour. Most drivers settle into the rhythm. They adjust their mirrors, turn on the radio, accept the situation for what it is. But then there is that one driver. The one who weaves between lanes without signaling. The one who tailgates inches from the bumper ahead. The one who accelerates through yellow lights, cuts corners, honks at anyone moving too slowly. To most people watching, this driver looks dangerous, reckless, maybe even stupid. But to a psychologist observing the same scene, this driver is deeply fascinating, because aggressive driving is rarely just about driving. It is almost always about something else entirely. People who drive aggressively do not form a single personality type. They come from every profession, every income bracket, every background imaginable. A surgeon and a delivery driver can both be the same kind of aggressive behind the wheel. A quiet, gentle person in everyday life can transform completely the moment they sit in the driver's seat. This transformation is one of the most interesting things about aggressive driving behavior. The car does something to people. It changes them. And understanding why it changes them reveals something remarkable about human psychology and the invisible pressures that shape daily behavior. Psychologists who study driving behavior have identified a consistent pattern across aggressive drivers. Many of them score high on a trait called neuroticism, which is one of the 5 major personality dimensions in psychological research. Neuroticism describes a tendency toward emotional instability, anxiety, and sensitivity to stress. People high in this trait experience everyday frustrations more intensely than others. A slow driver in front of them does not feel like a minor inconvenience. It feels like a threat, a personal offense, an obstacle specifically placed to make their life harder. The emotional response is disproportionate to the situation, but from inside their mind, it feels completely justified. There is also a well-documented psychological phenomenon at work called displaced aggression. Research shows that when people experience stress or frustration in one area of their lives, they often release that emotional tension in a completely different context. The traffic jam becomes the outlet for the argument they had with their partner that morning. The slow driver ahead becomes the symbol of the boss who dismissed their idea in a meeting. The red light that catches them becomes the final straw after a week of accumulated pressure. The road becomes the stage where emotions that cannot be expressed elsewhere finally find their exit. There is a man named Richard, 43 years old, who works in middle management at a logistics company in a mid-sized city. By all accounts, Richard is patient with his colleagues, attentive with his children, and generally considered a reasonable person to be around. But his wife will tell you something different about the moment he gets behind the wheel. She described watching him transform in real time. His jaw tightens before he even leaves the driveway. By the first stoplight, he is already commenting on other drivers. By the highway on-ramp, he is fully in what she calls his other mode. Richard himself admitted that driving is the one place in his life where he feels no social obligation to manage his reactions. At work he must be professional. At home he tries to be present and calm. But in the car, alone, surrounded by strangers who will never see him again, the internal rules change completely. This is a crucial insight into aggressive driving psychology. The car creates a unique social environment unlike almost any other in modern life. It is a space of anonymity. The drivers around an aggressive person are not people in the full psychological sense. They are obstacles or symbols or targets. The glass and metal of the vehicle creates a psychological barrier that strips away normal social accountability. Psychologists call this deindividuation, the process by which anonymity reduces self-awareness and lowers the barriers that normally regulate behavior. The same person who would never shout at a stranger on a sidewalk will honk aggressively, gesture rudely, and tailgate dangerously because the social feedback mechanisms that usually govern behavior are absent. No one will remember their face. There are no consequences visible in real time. But the psychology goes even deeper than anonymity. Driving is one of the few activities in modern life that activates a very primal sense of territory. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that driving taps into ancient instincts around space, movement, and dominance. When another driver cuts in front, it registers not simply as a traffic event, but as a territorial intrusion. The emotional system responds accordingly, triggering a stress response that is far older than automobiles or traffic laws. This is why aggressive driving can feel so viscerally personal, even between complete strangers. The brain is not processing a minor merge. It is processing something that feels, on a deeper level, like a challenge to survival space. Control plays an equally significant role. Research consistently shows that people who feel a strong need for control in their daily lives are more vulnerable to road rage and aggressive driving. Life is full of situations that resist control. Economic pressures, health anxieties, relationship difficulties, professional disappointments. The road, paradoxically, feels like a place where control should be absolute. You are operating your own machine, moving toward your own destination. And when something disrupts that feeling of control, a sudden lane change, a driver moving slower than expected, an unexpected detour, the psychological reaction can be extreme. The frustration is not just about the traffic. It is about every place in life where control has already been taken away. There's also a community of sorts that forms around aggressive driving culture, though it operates very differently from the tight-knit communities of car restorers or modifiers. Aggressive drivers often bond through shared complaint. At workplaces, at social gatherings, people trade stories of terrible drivers, close calls, infuriating commutes. These conversations function as a form of social bonding, a way of establishing shared identity through common frustration. The road becomes a collectively hostile territory, and surviving it daily becomes a badge of resilience. This shared narrative reinforces aggressive driving behavior because it frames assertiveness on the road as normal, even necessary, rather than as a choice that carries real consequences for others. What is perhaps most revealing about aggressive drivers is what their behavior says about stress and modern life more broadly. Studies in traffic psychology have found a direct correlation between overall life stress levels and aggressive driving incidents. When economic conditions worsen, when social tensions rise, when people feel increasingly pressed for time and resources, road aggression statistics climb. The highway becomes a mirror of collective psychological pressure. The steering wheel becomes the place where the accumulated weight of modern existence finally breaks through. Every beeping horn in rush hour traffic is, in some sense, a symptom of something larger than traffic itself. The people who drive aggressively are not simply bad people or careless people. Most of them are ordinary people carrying extraordinary pressure, expressing it in the one space where the normal rules of social restraint feel temporarily suspended. They are people who feel unseen in their daily lives, finding a momentary sense of power in a machine that responds instantly to their commands. They are people whose emotional regulation has been worn thin by stress, whose need for control finds its only available outlet on a stretch of asphalt between one obligation and the next. The road does not create aggressive drivers, it simply reveals them. It strips away the careful performances people maintain throughout daily life and shows, briefly and sometimes dangerously, what is really happening underneath. What is usually happening is exhaustion, frustration, and a deep human longing for control in a world that offers very little of it. The next time someone tailgates or cuts across 3 lanes without warning, it may be worth remembering that the behavior almost never begins in the car. It begins somewhere much more private, and the highway is simply where it finally comes out. Every honking horn in rush hour traffic is, in some sense, a symptom of something much larger than traffic itself. These are ordinary people, carrying extraordinary pressure, expressing it in the one space where social restraint feels temporarily lifted.